wherever you are in the world, and thanks for joining us. My name is Anne Marie Alanis, and I'm the host of Rare Digital Bird. Um, Rare Digital Bird's a show that highlights the stories of artists, musicians, and interesting projects in the world of NFTs. And we've got Carolyn Marie with us today. Hi, Carolyn.
Good
She's
morning, Anne-Marie.
she's a self-taught digital arts alchemist, and she's about to drop it like it's hot, hot, hot. That's because the collection she's about to drop at Async Art is called Hot, 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 the 7-Day Glitch. So, Carolyn, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm great, Anne-Marie. I had about 5 hours of sleep and up early, ready to chat with you.
Well, thank you for being on the show today. And you're all the way in
Hawaii?
Hawaii right now, overcast there.
No, but it's still early and it's a little, it's winter time. The sun doesn't come up super early.
Yeah. Here we've gotten like pretty much an inch an hour, so there's a lot of snow out here in Chicago.
Oh, well, that sounds very quiet and cozy.
It's beautiful to look at from inside a room rather than being outside. So I definitely want to talk more about what you're about to drop, this 7-day piece. But before we start to do that, I definitely want to get to know you as an artist. And I'm sure everybody wants to hear more about who you are and how you started out as an artist. So let's talk about that.
Okay, well, my experience with arts and various, mediums and disciplines has more or less run my whole life, but I never really had any kind of encouragement or positive signaling that there was any other way to be an artist other than to be sort of a dead/impoverished European man. So I've only really begun to think about myself as an artist, I guess in the last couple of years. And thankfully, I'm like one of the many, I guess, sort of people emerging from the pandemic as like, you know what, this is what I need in my life. And so 2020 was what I really used like art intensively to focus and sort of as a survival mechanism, because it was just nothing but doom and gloom 24/7 across all channels. And it was, just it felt so heavy that, that was kind of my survival practice. And then 2021 sort of, I felt like was more of like an emerging, like this is more of my voice and more of a perspective rather than just kind of holding off the darkness of uncertainty. And this kind of all coincided with my discovery about art being put onto the blockchain. Like I've been familiar about like blockchain and crypto since like early kind of like Bitcoin days, which was all way too technically advanced for me to like start mining at the time. So my rabbit hole kind of started at the end of 2020 and I went from more or less, I think it was like Slime Sunday on Instagram, which kind of led me down a rabbit hole to Super Rare, which led me down a rabbit hole to like Krista Kim and like Mars House and Hop Hop Hop. I ended up at Async eventually, and I'm like, this is where I need to be, because I'd been thinking a lot about during 2020 is, as I'm developing what I consider, sort of like a distinctive kind of style or perspective, that I really wanted to think about how can I, make this viable economically, and I prefer not to deal with like physical products so much anymore. I've worked in those type of mediums in the past, and just for me, it's just far too intensive, and it's too much energy and space and resources dedicated to that. And I just really love the digital medium, and it feels so liberating to be able to like take an idea, and work with just really simple digital tools. Because I work from a comfort and accessibility standpoint, and like my cameras and like my iPad are my primary tools because they have much less of visually intensive like user interfaces, which is easy for me because like I can use them for more than like an hour, like OG, Adobe and Photoshop stuff on desktop, like I kind of like I have some visual accessibility issues where there's just too much to be doing that all the time. So like the iPad and like more modern newer tools that have like developed in the last like decade even are really, I feel much more aligned with that than more analog and physical art forms and mediums. So basically, this is like, I feel like destiny. I love it. And I could talk for hours and hours
Yeah,
about that. Please lead
yeah,
me.
yeah, you talk about async art. I think people, maybe I should explain what async art is. It's this NFT platform that allows artists to make their art dynamic, and which means your art can change over time, and people can own it and control like a part of the art or a layer of the art, as if you would see on Photoshop. Of a particular artwork and change it at their whim and a little ETH, or maybe a lot, depending. um, or changes can happen autonomously using templates, which is what you were referring to as being made easy to do. So Async offers different ones, like your art can change in the day and in the night. There's the blueprint template, the newer one, which allows you to have layered art with rarities. And then the one that you're using, the 24-hour template, which you're using in a little different way. So why don't you tell us more about Hot, 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 what it's all about?
Okay, well, I can talk more about all of these async templates too, because I definitely have a whole queue of work using all of the templates available. And if I didn't have such a long queue, I'd already be working further on a blueprint already, which um, like my first experience was when before Async even had like things like 24-hour or day night templates rolled out yet, and they were more or less custom crafting stuff behind the scenes with artists, kind of like more one-on-one to get the functionality that they wanted. And I kind of looked it up too, just for reference, is like when Async first launched, kind of like the end of like around 2020, well, like the beginning of 2020, more or less. Like, and because they kind of like popped on to the scene, kind of like low key in Twitter, like in late 2019. And like back then, ETH was like under $200. Okay. So like the whole concept is so different, but I saw like this summer, I was like, okay, the multi-layered pieces, like they're really great and fun and people like, I want to make more of those. But I think in the current kind of gas war climates, as like the 24-hour pieces seem to be a more fun way to like get people interested and like familiar with the concept without having that like, oh, I have to pay every single time. Like that's a wonderful feature and I love it so much. But like the 24-hour pieces or like the day night templates, they're more like full autonomous, where they just sort of like run based on time alone. And there's no extra like gas to like change states or anything like that, which you can do with like a custom template on Async. And then like, for example, even to go even further, I feel like the blueprints now are making it even more accessible, because you can create like basically a generative collection and not have to mint it, because a lot of the that data is being handled on the back end. And then when people mint from the site, you sort of get to like crowd fund, so to speak, your collection with that. And I think that's a really great way to not only democratize like the generative art, but also to like reduce kind of like the onboarding collection creation or art creation for people. Because without having money to like mint something, and the more complicated your piece is, that can be rather costly. And now with the way gas is, it's ETH is not $200 anymore or whatever. So, it's a big change for the economy, the economics of it. And so I have created some other 24-hour pieces and also day and night pieces, because it was just, I think I joined, or I was onboarded back in August. So like the August, I think Friday the 13th cohort, and Async had just launched the 24-hour like template. So I was really excited to try that out, because right now, like the only other thing that you can do other than like knowing like JavaScript or HTML to code something special and mint it like on Hicketnug or wherever where you can mint HTML files and things, that you can interact with. Like Async Art was the only place that you could get not just a sort of like, this is a singles thing and it's more or less, it stays the same all the time. Like no matter what happens during the day or what time it is, this is just like a static, either image, video, GIF, whatever, GIF, GIF, whatever. So I
Right,
really
and
began
it
to like
changes the
explore that and sort of like how can we imagine like images evolving and moving and changing over time. And one of my first things that I minted on Async was a 24-hour kind of like clock that was more or less like a very slow, like 1 frame per hour animation, right? So I kind of like to play with animation in that way too. But like, there's just so much you can do with async that I'm like pacing myself to try to just get everything out. But my first kind of bigger like exhibition and sale for my 24-hour catastrophe averted, I used 24 different images.
Mhm.
Variations of one image, like with the color changing and details changing. And that's the way you can squeeze like the most into your NFT. But there's also the practical human element of not everyone stays up for 24 hours all the time. So there may be parts of that artwork that you don't see maybe like possibly ever if you're really, good at your sleeping schedule.
Yeah.
But so for this collection, I felt like I had already created this collection, the hot sort of visual style and collection kind of emerged on its own organically over the summer, which predates Catastrophe Averted. But knowing that it's like a bigger body of work because it's 7 pieces more or less, I felt like it was like, because it already had 6 frames to create an animation, like a glitch animation. And so I was like, well, what if we apply that same principle and we just stretch those 6 frames out over 24 hours? So you get that looping effect and you get like those subtle changes that happen, throughout the day. And, but there's not any sort of thing that is inaccessible. Like if you're up for 6 hours a day, you should be able to experience all the different states that are going to rotate through. And
So
so for each,
instead of an image changing each hour on the hour, it's going to be 6 images, and then it'll be divided throughout the 24 hours.
well, it will still change every hour. So every hour it
Got
will change. It's just 1 frame
Oh, got it. Got it.
instead of like 5 frames per second, which is the speed that I created the glitch animation to be in originally. We were working off of one static image and then making 5 variations so it's just like 6 frames with 5 frames per second is my another variation of this collection, which is a fully animated that I'm gonna mint today or tomorrow or the next day.
And you're
But
going to mint that
this is
on.
a slow animation on this 24-hour template.
So this is a separate one, and you're going to mint that where so people can find it?
Hoping to be, it should show up on my wallet, my Ethereum wallet, and my Showtime. But I'm thinking it will be Zora, but I was having a little technical difficulties last night. So hoping that that's going to still be the plan, but it may end up just being possibly on OpenSea.
Okay.
Directly,
Right.
but it will show up with my wallet. I only have one Ethereum wallet, so that's
what was your process with coming up with the collection of hot? What's the meaning of it all? Tell us more about the behind the scenes of getting that piece up, or coming up with that piece.
All right. Well, I guess it starts with photography, and I grew up shooting things on like 35 millimeter film. A lot of times disposable film. And so like I have a lot of, that obviously that's the starting point. I've worked with a lot more than that, but so it's just like it's kind of a craft that I've taken a break from for a while. And during a lot of my more intensive times experimenting with photography just for fun as part of like life or whatever, I never was as comfortable in front of the camera, and maybe had some like bad experiences with like, not being the one who's behind the camera. And so I feel like this sort of was in pandemic time, you're sort of like peak isolation. There's not much around you. So the inspiration, you're sort of like scraping, not, I'm not saying scraping the bottom of the barrel, but I was wanting to like study more like human form so I could practice more drawing and things like that too. And so I just was like, well, if I want to be putting more art on the blockchain, I should, perhaps make sure, or maybe try to put more of my own work into it. Because I had been using a lot of Creative Commons sort of like public images on like Unsplash or like NASA imagery or whatever to make like collages and things. Like that's kind of my one of my favorite mediums is doing collage. And so this was just a way for me to like, I guess, put some more skin in the game. And I didn't really anticipate the process. It kind of just evolved from basically just looking at the light. I'm kind of obsessed with like light and color and texture. And so, that's really all it takes for my eye to be drawn to something is just like some interesting light and shadow. And so like, a quiet evening at home during, more or less lockdown, it's to become involved in self-portraits, photography. See, it was, I suppose, inevitable that it would come down to this, because that's really just kind of just evolved very, very organically. I was like, grooming myself in the mirror or whatever, like, after in the evening or something. And in the evenings, I have usually a single, I kind of have a very low lighting. I turn on a red light even because I have really sensitive eyes. And at night, I just kind of want that break. And in fact, I'm a little confused because I see your red background and I'm like, it's like it kind of has that warm ambiance and glow. And it's just very like relaxing and calming for me. And so I just happen to be, looking in the mirror and seeing the light and shadow. And I was like, well, let's see, I have a tripod somewhere. Let's see what happens. And kind of just a little love letter to myself. And then, maybe it simmered for a while kind of in my camera roll. And eventually I pulled it up in Procreate and started playing around, and this sort of style and texture and colors kind of just more or less emerged as I like was thinking about things about, privacy and, kind of, our personal expression and intimacy and, a lot of those really deep things, like in the digital age, like we exist in this kind of like weird, razor edge between privacy and everything being public all the time. And as well as just like thinking about how digital everything is and kind of thinking in an abstract way about media and communication and technology, and not just communication and technology, but just like distance, like seeing the pandemic is just the impact of people like, airplanes not flying anymore and people just not going anywhere, and just like this extreme, like almost like turning back 100 years as far as like how fast things, I mean, not that extreme, but just thinking about all of these things swirling around kind of in the collective consciousness. And you have really just like evolved organically as sort of a, I guess, love letter kind of to myself, but in a way that isn't necessarily explicitly personal. Because I was kind of thinking about like how much do we need to see of ourselves, or like someone that we know and love, to be able to identify them, right? But like also how much do we conceal or reveal to, make ourselves known too. And so I guess all
Mm.
of that were part of my thought process and kind of inspiration creating that. And then later, I guess I'll sort of just touch on, because it's the same style and process really, is for the Buy Art Save Kittens charity that Coldy puts on for Kitty Bungalow. I wanted to submit something because that was announced right after I got admitted to Async, that there would be this exhibition and this charity auction. And so I went through and looked at all my like cat sort of related artwork, and I have like cartoons and drawings and other photography, and I even tried creating things from scratch. But what I did know is that I have a cat, and every time I, go to lie in my sun patch to sunbathe, my cat will show up like more or less and join me like without fail. So I knew that no matter how bad I was feeling, which I was feeling quite bad on the day that I shot that photo, is I knew that I would go outside and with my camera, my cat would show up and that she
Yeah.
would be willing to pose with me for a little bit of an impromptu photo shoot. And so that's what we did. And then again, looking at my, looking at the reel and all of the different images that I took, the movement and energy in this one just seemed to kind of resonate the most. And this style emerged again. And so instead of doing it all in one color, I broke it up into, I changed the levels and made 24 different color and detail combinations on that, in what I consider to sort of be the hot style, which is really where it originated, which is the combination of glitch and liquefaction effects in Procreate, which is my weapon of choice.
Yeah, I like the we should actually take a look at a lot of your art so the audience gets an idea of your style. And so let's see here. We've got your selected works here.
That's my first async piece right there.
Oh,
But
that
these are all animated because most of them are time pieces. We don't have time to sit for 24 hours to watch
yeah,
everything change or to go through the Explorer. So yeah,
that's cool.
that's me and my kitty.
Okay. And you also have some pieces here on Hicket Nunk as well, yes? So let me see here.
We might have. Okay,
Here we go.
this is my Genesis piece, and this is what I would consider my astral swim style, which is very surreal, kind of uplifting, sometimes romantic visual style that's usually compiled with like Unsplash or Pexel images and NASA images. And these are sort of more like my meditative, inspirational style that I like. And I minted this in June.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first thing that I put onto the blockchain at all. So that's a one of one. I did later mint in July a collectible edition where I have a voiceover poem that I read. That's this poem. It's also called Genesis. And you can kind of see there. So there's, the collectible one right there. That's got a little ambient audio and voiceover that I created.
Oh.
Oh my gosh, it's playing. Oh my gosh, make it stop. So, but yes,
Okay.
I really I'm torn because I like the idea of one of ones, because once you create something, like there's sort of like that's the instance, right? But I also understand the idea of creating editions that people are more collectible, even if they're not like collectible in the terms of kind of like generative PFP type collectible type things, but more of like just several, limited editions of things. So my original Genesis has no sound, it's square format, it's animated only. And then the collectible one has, an ambient stream sound that I recorded this summer, and as well as like the me reading the poem as well as like a visual text of the poem that kind of comes up on the end. And I minted like 1,000 of those just to sort of like keep it on there sort of forever because it is my Genesis. And
Mhm.
I don't know, it's just sort of like a different vibe over on the sort of Tezos blockchain.
So going back to your collection, Hot, 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 which you're going to be dropping, you're going to have a piece per day over 7 days, correct? So, and that will be dropping on Async. Is there a particular piece that's your favorite that you'll be dropping throughout those 7 days? And that's the 6th through the 12th, February
Is
6th through
it?
the 12th, right?
Oh, what do you
Yeah,
mean the 6th to the 12th? Okay, well,
is when you'd be dropping each one.
okay, well, it's whatever you tell me to, and because you're in charge of
That's what we
all
talked about, Carolyn.
the scheduling. Oh, yes, you're right. I don't know why I keep thinking of the 11th. I think it's because there's the ETH Denver conference that I'm having this the full like a faster animation
Yeah.
compilation that I'm minting for. Yeah, okay, so yes.
And you're
My
minting that today.
well, today or maybe like in the next 3 days. I had,
Okay, okay.
it's bleeding edge. There may be technical difficulties that cause delays,
Okay.
TBD. But
So going back to the question, do you have
okay,
a
you want me to
favorite?
pick my favorites?
Well, I mean, your one favorite.
Well, I can give
Is
you
there
my okay, probably my most favorite would be well, because I guess I'll talk about it a little bit. Okay, like it's a 7 days, and so it's like I start the week on Sunday, which is dimanche, and then we sort of start on our knees and we end up laying down on Saturday, sort of like out flat. And all of those images were shot except for Saturday, samedi, merged down that was shot outdoors, and the other ones were all shot indoors with the red light. But my favorite one is going to be Vendredi Lullaby, which is
I'm
also
sorry, what is this language that you're speaking?
it's called French.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah,
All
anyways,
right.
so this is just this. I know this is just in my imagination. It's
Okay.
kind of like Groundhog Day esque. That it's sort of like
Okay.
this week. If you were to like revolve this week, it's sort of like a week in the day in the life, kind of like a personal romance, if you will. And so it's also named after like the collection is sort of after a song by The Cure. So Lullaby is on Friday, and I'm kind of like
Hmm.
I don't know. It's just one of my favorites, and I think because it has some nice like warm photography qualities. Because when you're shooting with a single light bulb at night, you need to use long exposure. You have to, so there's a little bit of wobble and kind of blurry softness too that lends to
Hmm.
that is already in the image before I begin to distort it and manipulate it. So I think it's just one of my favorites. And also, I did kind of try to stack my favorites towards the end of the week a little bit. So like Thursday, Friday, Saturday probably are my favorites. Yes.
Okay.
You
Well, I can't wait to see it.
if I have to choose, those would probably be my favorites. But
Awesome.
really, I
Okay.
think as a whole body of work, really.
Okay. Okay.
A week in the life, if you will.
Okay. So,
Oh no.
okay. So I'm thinking we should, before we talk about like where people can find it, I want to play a little fun game. You'd have to pick a number between 1 and 150. And I'll come up with a fun question depending on the number. So go ahead and choose a number.
See, I'm just going to choose number 3.
Number 3. Okay, let me see here. Number 3.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize there'd be so many choices.
Okay, it says
It's
here,
my go-to.
what would you do if you were offered a 1-minute ad slot during the Super Bowl that you couldn't sell?
What do you mean I couldn't sell?
That you don't want to sell the ad, but what would you do with it? Because
You mean I'd
most
have to
people would be
create
like,
an
"Oh, I want to make money out of it," but we want to take that option out. So, what would you do if you were offered a 1-minute ad slot during the
so
Super
it's
Bowl?
like a PSA or something?
Is that what you want to do? A PSA?
I mean, I don't understand what you mean by don't get paid. I suppose I would try to like amplify some kind of, non-commercial message. I don't know.
Oh,
I didn't have my.
the whole not selling the ad thing is because most people would be like, oh, I'd sell the ad because you'd get a lot of money.
Oh,
But we
you
want
get
to
them.
take that option out. So what would you do?
Oh, I'd probably try to like, just disrupt the mainstream consciousness in some way. I mean, it doesn't take much. And as long as you're not selling anything, that'll really confuse people. They'll be like, what's happening? The Super Bowl. What's for sale?
Disruption. Okay.
Probably disruption. Well, of consciousness specifically, like wake up in some
Interesting.
way. Kind of just,
So
yeah.
kind of like some kind of I don't know, maybe this old pop culture reference of like a Max Headroom kind of like
Maybe.
disrupting and having this like particular message.
I
Okay.
mean, nothing that would cause like mass panic, but maybe like mass awakening or something. That would probably be. I would hope I could have a little bit more time to prepare for it, but that's probably something like that.
Okay. Okay. And how about picking another number?
I mean, come on, you're like setting me up. Number 8.
Number 8. Okay.
I have 2 numbers in my sort of handle, so those
Okay.
are my numbers.
Oh, really? Are those your favorite numbers? Are
There are
you
some.
into
They are kind
numerology?
of my favorite. They're kind of my favorite.
Oh yeah, you did talk about particular numbers being special to you. So that's cool. Uh, where would you go if you could teleport yourself from one place to another?
Oh my God. Probably everywhere. Just like,
Yeah, at
just
once? That'd be
metaverse
great.
style. You could just spawn all over. I mean, I feel like for the sake of this collection, I would be like teleporting to Paris for some
Yeah.
like, I don't know, some gluten-free like pastries. Because yeah, it's still
Awesome.
the capital for that. I mean, just regular gluten or not, but still probably that.
Okay, that was fun. We talked about how when you're going to drop Hot, 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 and you're also going to be dropping a separate piece, possibly on Zora in the next few days as well. You will have an auction for the piece 7 days. When will that
There,
auction?
um, for the async, the auction is, I believe we talked about ending it on Wednesday the 16th,
Right.
which
Okay.
also happens to be a day when I'm getting my teeth cleaned. So I will be I will be radio silence for a little bit of time for driving and teeth polishing. And that happens to coincide beautifully with when this ETH Denver conference is, and the exhibit that's going to be in the Jonas Building, I believe, starting on February the 11th.
Oh, okay.
And so I probably will set up something around the same time too there, because they're more or less the same, part of the same kind of like body of work, and it makes sense to put it all kind of around the same time. And the schedules are nice and compatible too, so it's really I think that's what's going to happen.
Okay.
All going, if everything goes
Good.
well.
Yeah, and so yeah, we definitely need to tell everybody where to find your piece. So that will be art. You can either search for Carolyn, or you can go to async.art /u/Carolyn /collection. So yeah.
And then Showtime is also pretty reliable, at least in terms of getting the links. I don't know if it will show the new async pieces. It's a little buggy. Everything's bleeding edge, but everything is connected to Showtime too. Like all my various wallets and works.
Okay.
If not complete.
Great. Thank you so much for telling us about Hot, 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 the 7-day glitch, which is inspired by the 7-year itch, right?
A little bit. I mean, it's a little play on words, but
a little. Oh, okay.
I mean, I can't resist an opportunity for that sort of wordplay.
Awesome. So yeah, Everybody, don't forget to follow Carolyn at Carolyn Marie. That's Carolyn, and we have a little leet speak here, M8RI3 on Twitter. And definitely check her work out at async.art. Thanks so much for sharing your story with us, Carolyn.
See you in the metaverse.
Awesome. Bye, hi peeps.